We're going to talk about white wines. What I have here is a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. We have my favorite Riesling, Cave Springs from Niagara region, and my favorite Prosecco right here, La Marca. I probably have 6 or 7 bottles at a time in my wine cellar of this. Inexpensive, I want to say $19 Canadian, and we'll just do one. The bottle won't last, I can guarantee you that. So we'll get right into it. I got my cheese platter right here. So what we want to look for, and get these bottles off to the side and the drinks here. So what we want to look for as a general rule with cheeses, white wines generally go better with cheeses than reds do. However, you can pair reds with cheeses as well. What we're going to show today is white wine with the cheeses that I've selected and the reasons. In the next couple of episodes, we'll go through some of the reds and the cheeses, and then we'll ultimately go through my favorite sweet wines with the more pungent cheeses. So as a general rule, let's say this again here. White wine, you want to pair with soft cheeses. Red wines, you want to pair with harder cheeses. And sweet wines, you want to pair with cheeses that are more pungent. So think of blue Gorgonzola. Something that is just, all I could say is the rotten cheese. So the rotten smelling cheese go very well with the sweet wines. But we'll talk about that, the reds and the sweet wines in another episode. For this episode, what I've chosen was, I got this gorgeous Beppino Ocelli Umbriago, it's called. It's actually a cheese that is aged in Barolo wineskins. It's just beautifully creamy. I got some goat cheese here, I got some feta, and I got some Jarlsberg. So when we classify cheeses, soft cheeses, you want to look at Taleggio, you want to look at Brie, Camembert. Feta is semi-soft, right? Because, I mean, it's crumbly. Jarlsberg, you can consider it a semi-soft as well. Soft, semi-soft. The Umbriago or the Beppino, it's a creamy. The goat cheese, obviously creamy. Taleggio will be creamy, Brie, Camembert, and so on and so on. So I'm sure all of you have tasted one of those cheeses. When you get it in your mouth, it's creamy, it just kind of coats, it just kind of sticks. The feeling is just incredible. White wine will go fantastic with the creaminess. The acidity will cut through the fat and will just make the white wines shine. So that's really the goal here. You want to match acidity. All these cheeses, you know, they have some level of acidity. White wines are typically more acidic. You know, you have the beautiful sparkling Prosecco or Champagne or Cava, which will have the refreshing bubbles that'll just clean the palate. You know, that's why this goes very well with anything that is a little higher in acidic, like oysters. You put in a shot of lemon, higher acidity, matches with the acidity here, makes the wine just pop. Same effect here. You have the saltiness, you have the acidity. You want to match it with the wines. What little exception here on the Riesling, it's an off-dry Riesling, so it has a hint of sweetness. So I like it because you're going to offset salt and sweetening. Everybody loves, you know, sweet caramel or salty caramel. The thought process is similar. So you want to do, you know, the salty cheeses with the off-dry. And try that combination as well. So these are 3 examples. You know, you have Pinot Grigio. There's tons, hundreds and different of white grapes. These are one of the most common that we typically see on the market. A little note about the Sauvignon Blanc, about the Chardonnay, because it is a little medium to heavier body wine. Depending on the cheese, what you likely want to do with a Chardonnay is, I have a Jarlsberg here. So if you have a Gouda, if you have a mild cheddar, very well, it goes very well with the Chardonnay, because the bodies, and that's another thing with cheeses and wine, you want to match the bodies. You never want to overwhelm one or the other. The combination is supposed to make the wine shine, and when it works, it really works. When it doesn't, what's going to happen is, example, if I were to take a creamier cheese with a heavy oak Chardonnay, the wine is going to taste bitter, metallic. So you want to watch for that when you're tasting. You never want to say, I often hear people say, oh, I don't like this wine, it tastes sour, it's just, you know, it's gross, I don't like the way it tastes. more than likely what they just finished eating is contributing to that. So just be very aware of that. And when you're serving your guests, you always want to you never want to go with something too out in left field, right? Like an oaky Chardonnay, you want to be careful with what you're serving it with. You don't want to do goat cheese, or you don't want to do a taleggio or a brie. It's going to overpower it. Instead, what you want to do is you want to have the high acidity wines. And Riesling, dry Riesling is incredible. Gewürztraminer, incredible as well. My favorite, obviously, is the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. This particular one here, I'm just going to give it a quick drink. This is warmer climate. What you're going to get is beautiful, the stone fruit, tropical fruit, and then just lime and beautiful zesty and acidic flavors. So that's why I love the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. They just provide such amazing flavors. Again, semi-sweet here, and the Prosecco is going to give you green apple, lime, and that beautiful, refreshing mouthfeel. So, the feta is going to be very salty, creamy with the goat cheese, creamy with the Beppino here, Taleggio, everything is going to be creamy. These are going to be refreshing. You always want to make sure that the fatty and creamy is cut by the acidity. We'll talk about red wines. However, I want to make a little note about the cheeses in white wine. Some of the cheeses like Brie, Camembert, and anything that has a rind or basically a skin, a moldy skin to it. So you want to be careful with that, because those skins and that rind is going to be savory, is going to be umami, and is going to be more powerful. So if you're taking a Camembert, and you can try this with a white wine. Take the Camembert, take the creaminess of the inside, and have a sip of the Sauvignon Blanc. Get that in there, wash it out. I always like to always have a handy glass of water here, because you always want to clean the palate, especially if you're going from white to red. But clean your palate, then go in for the Camembert with the skin on it, and try that again. The umami flavors of the skin, or the rind, or basically the fermented exterior, will tend to make the white wine taste a little bitter. So again, it's the choice of cheeses you want to be aware of. You want to serve that Camembert. Typically, I usually stick with the inside because it's gooey and creamy. But just be aware if you're serving cheeses that have an outer rind and that is going to be savory. If that is the case, then Chardonnay will likely be your friend. Again, here is your matching flavor. So if you're going to have the umami, you're going to have the richness in the mouth. So think about mushroom. That's the best way I can describe umami flavors. When you eat a mushroom, you get that earthiness, you get that beautiful kind of mouthfeel. So it's the same with the rind, and it's the same with those savory and bitter rinds around cheeses and the moldy cheeses, right? You're going to have that same feeling. So the oak Chardonnay, or the Chardonnay in itself, is great. Another alternative, in which we'll talk about in the red wines, is if you're going to have cheeses that have the rind, go with a fruitier, medium body reds. And we'll talk about that, whether it's Garnacha or whether it's anything that is the Gamay Gray, Beaujolais we talked about in the last few episodes. Those are beautiful with more savory, so something that is more fruit forward. For this case, let's stick to soft cheeses. I know what's not on here is my favorite cheese, the king of all cheeses, Parmigiano Reggiano. We'll talk about that with the reds. But again, the Parmigiano will be too sharp for white wines. It'll likely be okay for the Chardonnay. However, it might be too sharp. I've tried the Chardonnay with the Prosecco. If you like your tongue on fire with acidity and saltiness, then that's a good combination. However, in general, you don't want your guests to be saying, "Oh, I don't like this Prosecco. It tastes, too acidic, or it's making my mouth feel weird." So you want to be careful about that. So hopefully you guys like that. I just want to give a quick sip on this Prosecco. So again, it's a great addition. The bubbles add the enhanced palate cleanser. What I would do with a charcuterie board, I would mix soft, hard cheeses. I would explain to my guests the rule of thumb: if you're going to have a hard cheese, go with the fruitier reds, go with the reds. If you're going to have a soft cheese, stick to the whites. You always want to serve whites and reds with a charcuterie board, because likely what you're serving won't go with just one set of wines. Stay safe. Sauvignon Blanc, dry Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Grigio is a fan favorite. Include a Prosecco or a Champagne is always nice to go with a charcuterie board. And then we'll talk about the reds. One thing with the boards, there's usually a sweet component, whether it's a jam or anything like that. The sweetness will actually make dry wines taste even more bitter. Again, we're talking about balance here, right? So when you look at pairing wine with foods, you want to balance. So if you're eating something that is much sweeter than the wine is going to taste bitter. So again, your guest will say, I don't like this wine, it tastes sour. And that's the common thread here. So be careful about that. If you're gonna put more sweet items on your charcuterie board, you also may want to add a sweeter Riesling. Or a dry or off dry or maybe something that is a little bit more residual sugar in the whites, but it's hard to go wrong, and I think this combination is actually pretty good here because you have the dry Sauvignon Blanc that will go with the soft cheeses. You have the off dry, a little bit of residual sugar that'll go well with the spreads, and the little fig spreads and so on will match perfectly. And then you have the palate cleanser, high acidity, sparkling right here. And then if you follow with another one or two reds, that'll pretty much capture, and if you have your guests understand that, then it's hard to go wrong. So be aware of that. One thing I didn't mention: olives on a charcuterie board. You want to watch with that because it'll tend to make the wine, the herbaceousness, pop in the wine. So when I say herbaceousness, what we're talking about is the green grass flavors. So the best way, I don't know if anybody has ever eaten grass when cutting the lawn, that's what you're going to get. You also, if you take green bell pepper and just chew it and just kind of let it linger, that's the herbaceousness you're going to get. So if you have olives and with white wine, I mean, I'm not too worried about the olives. It's usually extras. You're not going to have a charcuterie board full of olives. So it's usually 1 and 2 here and there, and it's not the majority of the charcuterie board. Will likely be cured meats, cheeses, and again, cured meats, as a simple side note, is high acidity umami flavors. If you started to catch of what I'm saying about the umami flavors and matching body and weight, you could see how some of the reds will go really well. However, with the acidity, you can see how some of the whites and the Chardonnays will go really well with that. So hopefully that gives you some insight. Again, if you're going to do charcuterie board and serve your guests, make sure you do, I would say, pick 2 whites if you're going to, budget. If you don't have that budget, pick 2 whites, Sauvignon Blanc, and I would say maybe an off dry, maybe save the Prosecco. And if you're going to do 2 reds, we'll talk about some of the reds, but 2 and 2 is usually great. If not, worst case, 1 and 1. Or at the very best, you don't want to take your chances with the reds. Just do 2 whites and it'll be safe, because in general, like I said at the beginning, white wines go primarily really well with all cheeses. Next week we'll talk about the red wines and cheeses. We'll also take a snippet. I'll try to get both of them in actually, to give you guys some insight in case you're preparing some charcuterie boards within the next couple of weeks. But I'll give you some insight on the red wines and the sweet wines and the cheeses to go with it. My favorite is always the sweet wines, because the balance of the pungent gorgonzola with the port wine or porto, really off the dry sweet wines is really fantastic. So hopefully you like it this week. Please share, provide comments. I'll be glad to review and answer any questions you guys have. Hopefully you guys enjoy the weekend. Let me know if you try any of these wines. Again, Cave Springs Rieslings. This is one of the more popular, Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc. La Marca, stock this in your cellar. You won't be disappointed. And again, the wine for this weekend, $30 Canadian. Again, all these wines are under $30 Canadian. La Crema, Chardonnay. You might as well just pick up the Pinot Noir while you're at it. If you're hosting a supper, this is a 2 really good combination to have at the table. So hopefully you enjoy that. Jules here from Behind the Cork. Like, share, provide any comments. But hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, mask up, and hope to see you soon. Take care.